Well, welcome in once again to another, what promises to be another awesome edition of Pick Your Politics, the show that brings you political guests to get you informed about local issues as well as national issues and encourage you to vet the candidates that you want to go out and vote for, and most importantly, get out to vote. I'm Dennis Silvers along with my great co-host Stephanie Phillips, and we're going to give her a big round of applause as we usually do. And of course, you know Mulligan, our decision dog, and always glad to have Mulligan on set. Anyway, we've got a wonderful show for you today. We're going to be talking about a local race, but a very important race with a gentleman that's been in Las Vegas for a long, long time and has really a wonderful career in law enforcement. And we all know, Stephanie, that law enforcement's really important today.
It is, with crime up in our city, and it's really important. We've got to get that under control.
We've got to get that under control. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about our guest who's standing by. Ray Spencer just recently retired from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, serving over 20 years, leaving at the rank of lieutenant. Throughout his law enforcement career, Ray has held numerous positions within Metro, ranging from the downtown area command, detective sergeant with the sexual assault section, commander for the Nevada Interstate Crimes Against Children Task Force, and many, many other positions. In March of 2018, Ray took over as commander of the Metro Homicide Section. Ray Spencer has received many awards and recognition throughout his career, such as Meritorious Service Award from Metro Police, as well as the Medal of Valor. How about that? While the incident commander of the world-famous 1 October mass shooting here in 2017 here in Las Vegas. Ray Spencer is on the ballot to become a member of the Las Vegas City Council, representing Ward 6, which you know is being vacated by a former guest, Michelle Fiore. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Anyway, let's bring up Ray on camera right now and welcome him onto the show.
Hey,
Ray, thanks for taking time out and coming on. I know that both Stephanie and I are excited about having you on, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
You know, Ray, you have a lot of friends, and I know you know them all, who has jumped into the political ring, like Lombardo for governor, like my good buddy Stavros Anthony for lieutenant governor. You've got McMahill for sheriff, Tom Roberts, Stan Hite. I mean, what's the attraction with the Metro guys to jump into the political ring, do you think? What's your motivation?
You know, I can tell you there's a lot of good law enforcement people that jumped into the political world. And, you know, I just think we need more people from law enforcement in public service, just because we bring a unique perspective that a lot of people don't have.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with that. What does your background bring, Ray, to the city council in terms of trying to affect change, not only in the ward that you would represent in Ward 6, but the entire city council?
Well, I think, you know, the background I have in law enforcement is unique. And, you know, with law enforcement officers, we see a lot of things that typical citizens don't see. And you bring a unique perspective. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to remain safe. They want their kids to be able to walk to school safely. They want to be able to take a jog. They want to be able to, you know, their house not get burglarized and their car not get burglarized. And these are all things that law enforcement experience is going to be a unique advantage for me at City Hall.
Yeah, exactly right. If I'm not mistaken, I think I read you went to UNR, I believe, Ray?
I did. Best school in the state.
Well, some would argue against that, but it's a fantastic school, and I think I read where also you you worked for campus police, so to speak, to help pay for your tuition, which is very cool.
So I ended up going to school at Reno when I left. I graduated from Western High School, went to college in Reno.
Okay.
And I worked for campus police department's escort service, which basically I gave rides to students at night, which was part of the police department. And then from there, I actually joined the Sparks Police Department and worked up there for about 4 years.
Before getting requested and recruited by Metro. That's great. Steph?
Well, speaking of crime, you know better than anybody, crime is up all over the valley, and people are worried about home invasions and theft and people walking into stores and stealing stuff and being shot down on the strip and all of those things. So what do you attribute this huge spike in crime? And also, when you're on the city council, what can you do with neighborhood communities and to help them protect themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you the first thing, and this is the reason I even got into politics. I never in my life envisioned that I'd be sitting here on a podcast talking to you about me running for city council. It was never in the plan. Basically, the last couple of years, I found myself complaining what I describe as an upside-down universe with a lot of the defund the police movements and a lot of direction of the country that we were going.
Mm-hmm.
That my wife was basically like, if you're going to keep complaining, do something about it. And that was my motivation to get into politics. And when you look at, don't just take my word for it. Look at your Ring doorbell app. Look at all these social media things where you see neighbors. Everybody's talking about the crime rate. And the reason we have the higher crime rate is over the last several years, we're basically lax on punishment for crime. Things that used to be, if you stole something at $251, used to be a felony. Now it's no longer a felony.
Right.
We're going away from punishing people for committing crimes. It's causing our quality of life and our safety to be compromised. The reason I'm running is
Yeah. Ray, did retiring when you did have anything to do with your ambitions for politics? Because you had a lot of good years left, my friend, with Metro.
Well, I had 25 years in the retirement system. I loved my job. I loved working for Metro. I loved being a police officer. But at May 15th, it became a financial decision where I was basically not showing up for work for very, very little. And I got 137 call-outs last year. Look at that demand of my family's life. There's only 365 days, and when you're out in the middle of the night, 137 of them, it's a very demanding assignment. So regardless of city council, I was retiring in May. I ended up staying 2 weeks later than May 15th. But, the city council thing just happened to coincide with when I was retiring.
Gotcha.
You were on the trafficking task force. Is that what it was with the sex crimes against children? And in this valley, that's such a huge problem. Are those penalties not stiff enough? Why is that so prevalent here in our valley?
So right now you have, Las Vegas leads the United States in the sex trafficking of juvenile victims. And that is an unbelievable statistic. And, you look at a lot of crimes where people should be getting punished and they're not. They're getting a very little amount of punishment. And also, you have judges that are very lax on criminals. And, if you're caught sex trafficking a 14-year-old, to me, I think you should spend, 20 years in prison.
Yeah.
And, it's very important to me. And that's one of the assignments that I really enjoyed working because, when you're putting someone in prison who is sex trafficking a child, you're truly making an impact, not only on that family, but the community as a whole.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
I was reading a
absolutely.
statistic today in the Las Vegas Tribune. 1 in 4 girls meet up with sexual violence, and 1 out of 13 boys
Really?
experience sexual violence. And I just think those statistics are horrific. And it just seems like that we should be able to do something more about that in this valley and bring more awareness. I know that Shared Hope International is an organization from Washington State, and they have worked with law enforcement here in Las Vegas and also the legislators to change the way the law enforcement deals with the girls.
Yeah.
Instead of treating them as criminals and prostitutes, they're actually, it's not really their choice. They're being trafficked, and they had to change those things around in order to treat them differently. Did you experience any of that, Ray, with how they were treated when they were brought in?
Here's the main concern that you have to look at as an investigator. And, we had some of the most passionate investigators in the sex trafficking unit when I worked in that unit. And the biggest thing where a hiccup in the criminal justice system is you need to separate the victim from their trafficker. And in a lot of jurisdictions, you don't have the option of bringing that child to, say, juvenile hall, where you would end up bringing that child to a walk-away facility. Well, then that child has the potential of walking away from the facility and going back to the sex trafficker. So there needs to be some type of balance where officers have an opportunity to, at least put the victim in a facility where they're not going to be able to walk away back to the trafficker.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. Ray, do you agree with me that I think Las Vegas as a whole is kind of a victim, if you will, of its own success in getting this kind of crime because of the 24/7 mentality, the bright lights, everything that's available here? Do you just think it's a magnet for these kinds of people to come here, runaways, pimps, that type of thing?
Oh, there's no question. Las Vegas attracts, a lot of criminal element because we have every vice in Las Vegas known to man, right? And, you look at some of the things when I was in the homicide section, it was every day we would get a call from an outside jurisdiction because their suspect had fled to Las Vegas. So there's definitely that attraction to people fleeing crimes or, fleeing other jurisdictions that come to Las Vegas. But, the one thing, living here, I've spent my whole life for the most part in Las Vegas, and I love this city. And that's the reason that, I chose to go down this political endeavor, because I realize the great things that this city has to offer. And, living out in the northwest part of the valley, I love the fact that I raised my family out here, and, I want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I also was reading this article about the Badlands lost that project and the lawsuits that have come against the city of Las Vegas, and they've lost two big ones already, and there's still two against the city of Las Vegas, and these, could cost the city tens of millions of dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How is the city going to reconcile having to pay such judgments? What are they going to do about that?
Well, I'll tell you, the Badlands situation is extremely complicated, but I will tell you, the city, in my opinion, is going to have to figure out a way to settle the Badlands incident because, you have a potential where the city could be on the hook for $1 billion. And,
wow.
There needs to be some type of settlement reached with the developer so the city is not at that type of liability.
Yeah.
Down the road.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's just stubbornness on their part, and I think they were foolish not to see the handwriting on the wall. And I think the guy is golden as far as Johan getting money, and a lot of money from the city.
Yeah, and the city was ready to settle, and then all of a sudden they just pulled out.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't keep up their end of the bargain. So now they're back to square one, it seems like. So
I don't know, Ray. What would be your first and most important priority when elected involving Ward 6?
Well, the first thing I want to do when I get elected is become a member of Fiscal Affairs, because, if you're not familiar with how Metro's financial situation, Fiscal Affairs controls, it's a panel. There's 2 city council members that make all the financial decisions for the police department. And I tell people, you're not going to find someone who is more pro law enforcement and public safety than I am. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that Metro Police and our fire services have the tools to keep our neighborhoods safe. And that number is my number one goal on City Council.
You talk about transparency on your website. You have a bunch of issues listed there, and you want the city to be more transparent with the public. So in which departments and specifically, what were you referring to there?
So there's been some instances where if you go back, last year there was an incident where the Review Journal requested some video that the city did not turn over that video until after the video had expired. And, I think, my experience with dealing with the media, I dealt with the media every day, and there's nothing more important than being transparent. I go back, I've had situations where it was not favorable to us in the homicide section or the police department. And when asked about that to the media, you come forward, you put those, if it's right or wrong, you still put the facts out to the public because they deserve to know the truth, regardless of if it's favorable or not. And that's how I've always been. You're not going to find anybody who's more accessible to the media than I have been over the last 4.5 years running Metro's homicide section. And that's one of the things, if you talk to reporters, they'll even tell you, you're not going to find anybody who's more accessible. I think that as a city government who works for the citizens, they need to be transparent. And that's it. When you're in positive situation and negative as well.
Totally correct. You've, in your position with Metro, in the various positions that you've had, you've gotten to know a lot of people within the government and probably state government within Clark County especially. I'm sure you've touched base with all of the current members of the Las Vegas City Council, the Clark County Commissioner, the mayor and stuff. Do you still keep contact with them? Have you talked to them about running for office? What do you think their thoughts are?
I've met with several of them, especially, now that I'm running for city council. But one of the things I pride myself on is, I'm a complete outsider. I've been a 25-year police officer. I don't have those connections to City Hall. I'm just your everyday citizen who just woke up one day and decided they're going to try to make a difference. And that's why I'm running for city council. I think it's important to recognize that I don't have those type of long ties with city council members or county commissioners. I've met them throughout the course of my job and throughout the course of the campaign. But, that's what separates me from my competitor. I don't have that type of entrenchment within the political world.
Okay, and I think that's a good thing.
The Valley is experiencing some water shortages and crisis at the moment. What do you think about that? What's your opinions on solutions on that? And how can being a council member, how can you help with that?
And when are we going to see the next body washing up in Lake Mead?
Yeah, my goodness. It's terrible.
I mean, nothing to laugh about. It's
There's
horrible.
already 4, yeah.
So I started a firestorm when I gave an interview a couple months ago when I said to David Charnes on Channel 8 that, I expect more bodies to be found as the lake receded. And here we are, more are showing up.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when I went out there on that homicide investigation that day, that was the true first time that I realized how bad the water problem is. And if you haven't been out to the lake and noticed the water level dropping, that was the first time that I really got to see it firsthand, and it's staggering. And I think, we do a great job as a community in conservation, but there's a lot of things that we could do better. And I also think, and I talk about this, we talk about the water rebate program.
Right.
My personal experience with that is, I have a lot of grass that I would like to get rid of in my house because, that's the grass that is hurting the water supply. And the example I gave is, I wanted to put a sport court in for my kids, but that's not acceptable under the water rebate program. And just certain things that I think could be tweaked that we can do better as a community, more people to take advantage of water rebate so we can do just additional steps for water conservation.
Yeah,
it's a tough issue.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I was also reading on your website about education. You have kids in the Clark County School District. How, as a council member, can you assist in bettering our education system here in Nevada?
Well, I can tell you, you're not going to find a louder and bigger advocate than myself for kids in public school here in this valley. I'm a huge proponent of parents having the choice of where they can send their kids. And, I look at both my boys, they're started their 8th and 7th grade in Cadwalader Middle School. And, everybody wants the best for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of issues right now in our education system in this valley. And I think, anything we can do to attract more teachers. And, one of the things that I want to look into right now, there's a big issue in the Northwest regarding housing development and trying to find a solution to an ultra high density development that's going in. And I think we should look at maybe providing some grants or programs for new teachers that allows them lower priced housing, so we can attract more teachers to the valley.
Yeah, that's good. As for talking about schools and being in law enforcement, we have cameras everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere we go, we have cameras. And with all of the attacks and things that happen at schools with students attacking teachers and other students and all of that, how come we don't have cameras all over every single school? And how come those aren't live streamed where parents can actually tune in and see in the classroom, the hallways, and see what's going on, and law enforcement as well?
So there are cameras in the school systems, as far as a lot of especially the newer schools do have a very good surveillance system at the schools.
Mm-hmm.
I got basically criticized because I gave a statement a few months ago that I do think, when you talk about the surveillance systems, on how the surveillance systems on cameras across the city, or the streetlights on the cameras that are on streetlights across the city, could help solve crimes and reduce violent crime in our city.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with there are some concerns when you deal with the rights of citizens and, is it a government overreach? And you have to balance that. You have to balance, how much is too much video surveillance and the public's right to privacy. So it's somewhere in between. And I think that, these are all things that people need to look at when you're trying to provide safety for our city.
Yeah, because that is a very fine line. Ray Spencer is our special guest here on Pick Your Politics. He is a candidate for Ward 6, Las Vegas City Council. And Ray, let me ask you this. Every candidate we've had on, whether they're running in Clark County or the city or statewide, knows that homelessness has become a very big problem here. Number one, what do you think is causing that, the main reason? And number two, as a member of the city council, what can you guys do to help abate that?
Well, I can definitely tell you the number one reason, it's two things that create the homeless problem in this valley, and it is mental illness and drug addiction. As a police officer for 25 years, I've experienced it and dealt with it firsthand. This city, or this state period, does not have enough resources for our mental illness problem. People don't realize that the number one provider for mental illness treatment in the state of Nevada is the Clark County Detention Center.
Wow.
That's a problem.
Wow.
So, as a state as in a whole, we need to figure out ways to provide mental illness treatment for our citizens. That's number one. But the other thing is too, I'm all for providing treatment and resources for those addicted and those that need help. But at the same time, you can't allow the homeless problem to get out of control where, kids are stepping over people sleeping outside in doorways on their way to school. There is a balance that you have, and I'm committed to making sure that the citizens have a good quality of life. And, it's a balance. You have to take enforcement actions.
Because of all the action going on in all the city, Ray, do you think CCDC needs to be expanded?
No, right now I can tell you CCDC is not over capacity.
It's not.
Unless it's changed over the last couple of months. No. And, but part of that problem, I had 53 murder suspects on house arrest. So if you let that sink in for a second, that we have 53 murder suspects that are out on house arrest, to me, that goes into some of the reasons that I decided to run for office. You're getting to a point where you are decriminalizing and allowing people out that shouldn't be.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you on a national level, you see, as a law enforcement officer, I want to see what your opinion is. You see the FBI, the DOJ, you see them going after their the administration's political adversaries. And a former president, they raided his home for what seems like such, nonsense.
Incredible.
And they just seem to be attacking their political opponents. And there seems to be, Americans think there's a lot of corruption in the FBI now. We can hardly trust them. They seem like a modern day Gestapo to a lot of people. What's your take on all of that that's been happening the last few days?
I agree. You look at other, nobody's dealt with, some of the, you go back to Hillary Clinton or you look at Hunter Biden, you don't see enforcement action there, but you are seeing, enforcement action on President Trump. So I share the same sentiments when you look at, you have a former president to say serving a search warrant on his residence seems to be a massive government breach.
Yes.
Just incredible.
I agree. I think,
got a lot of people very, very upset in this country, no matter where you stand. Ray, before we let you go, what do you got on the agenda for any upcoming events that you have, fundraisers, so on and so forth, that perhaps Steph and I can help you out with?
Well, right now we're ramping up the fall campaign schedule. So right now we're in the process of putting all those together and starting our walk schedule and fundraising. That right now fundraising is what I'm doing at this point, and just trying to get out as many voters as I can. I can tell you, I'm going to lose a lot of weight in this heat walking forward. So I guess there's a good side of that. I'll be 20 pounds lighter in November.
Poor Ray.
That will be that's going to be very, very good. From what I see, Ray, from the interior of your car, I'm betting your car needs a wash.
So I'm getting a wash right now. It's raining.
Oh, is it?
It's raining now. I planned on doing this interview from the inside of my house, but I had a flat tire on the way to do the interview.
My goodness.
We're glad you're safe and glad you pulled over and were able to spend this time with us. Can you, before we go, give people your point of contact and your website information, how they can donate to your campaign?
Yes, absolutely. If you go to electrayspencer.com, and you can click on the donate link there as well. And any support, I've had hundreds of small donations. Those $25, $50, $100 donations is the reason that I'm here talking with you right now. And I'm very proud of that because no other candidate in this race has had so many small donations. So please, electrayspencer.com. You can also reach me directly. My cell phone number is 702-419-1301. Think about that for a second. 419-1301. My cell phone number, and you can reach me directly at any time.
That's awesome.
Perfect.
That's awesome. Ray, thanks so much for coming on the show. Stephanie and I really enjoyed it. We wish you all the best in your run for city council. And again, anything we could do to step up and hopefully help you a little bit, we're more than happy to do it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys, and I appreciate it. You guys have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Ray. See you soon.
Thanks, Ray. We'll see you. Ray Spencer, everybody. Makes a lot of common
He's
sense.
a great candidate. Yeah, I think he's going to do real well on the city council. He's got wonderful experience in the valley and
Got great experience
yeah,
in the valley.
and people are most concerned, it seems like, in their communities about crime and
Yeah.
things like that. And who's better for that
Yeah,
than him?
he's on top of it, no doubt. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Pick Your Politics. For Stephanie Phillips, I'm Dennis Silvers, and we've got Mulligan waving goodbye to you. Hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you back same time, same place next week. So remember, get out and vote, vet and vote. So long, everybody.
See you later.